Hello to the TOC meeting on 16th of January. The agenda today is to review the action items from last week. We'll get an update from the application runtime interfaces working group, review PRs, and check on any other business. So actions from last week, we didn't have any. So then we can proceed with the next point, the update from the app runtime interfaces working group. Hello, hi, Greg. You can start if you are ready.
All right. Cool. So I guess before I get into any of the technical topics, I am going to be going on a 3-month leave in a few weeks because I'm having a kid. So during that period, I'm going to be either looking for an interim working group lead to fill in for me and make sure that we are still merging all the promotion PRs that are appropriate to be merged. Or I'll potentially be looking for a longer term co-lead for that area. So that's near the top of my list of things to do before I disappear. So if anyone has any nominations or is interested in filling either of those positions, definitely reach out to me and I'll make sure we have someone in place before I disappear. As far as technical topics, since this has been the holiday period, it's been a little bit of a slower period, but we still have some interesting stuff going on. I guess on the CAPI side, some of the big things that we've been working on recently, continuing the gradual migration for supporting Puma. So I think we had started that effort a while ago and it's kind of ebbed and flowed some. And just as a reminder for those of you who haven't been following this migration since its beginning, one of the big blockers for being able to use Puma as Cloud Controller's web server in a production environment is having good support for metrics. So currently Cloud Controller is still one of the final holdouts on using statsd for metrics, which doesn't really work with Puma's kind of clustered model. So we're in the process of moving over to supporting Prometheus metrics, which is something we wanted to do anyway, and also gives us an opportunity to kind of rethink some of the metrics that we're emitting and whether they're actually useful for operating Cloud Controller. So we're currently in the middle of switching over to supporting Prometheus metrics, either on Puma or on the current thin web server. And then once we have a Prometheus implementation of Cloud Controller's metrics that we feel good about, then we could theoretically swap over to Puma and have equivalent or better functionality than we do currently on thin. So that's been a long time going, but we're continuing to make steady progress on that. I guess another milestone on the CAPI side is we're in the process of upgrading to Rails 7. That sounds a lot scarier than we believe it will be. It seems like this is a pretty smooth upgrade, though I may have just jinxed it by saying that. But that's another piece of work that's currently in progress. And then another couple of small things that we've been meaning to work on for a while, but are kind of finally getting to. So one is something that I know Amelia is very passionate about, which is making it so that the default blob store that ships with CF deployments as part of CAPI release exposes a TLS route. So or registers as a TLS backend. So again, this won't affect most people running production environments because you'll probably be using a external blob store at that point. But just for a like secure by default option, this is, and for also being able to update the route registrar to no longer be able to register non-TLS backends. This is an important step along that way. So this is another kind of small step forward there. And then I guess
I'm so excited. I didn't know this was on the docket.
yeah, I mean, there's engineers working on it now. I'm not going to make any promises until it actually ships, but it's something that's being actively worked on currently, which is more than it's been for a while. And then another thing that we've been working on that has been another kind of cross CF deployment collaboration project. I guess we have a bunch of these. Yeah, so another cross CF deployment collaboration project we're working on is adding Zipkin support to or to CAPI release. So this is something that the runtime deployments so some of the other CF deployment components that add the ability to have Zipkin traces and spans in like Diego components, for example. So you could trace requests through the different Diego components. And so we have those trace IDs in CAPI release, but we aren't currently tagging all the CAPI logs with them. So we're working to expand CAPI release to have all of its various components, or I won't promise all, but as many as we can reasonably get of its components to also include those Zipkin trace IDs. So you could conceivably, once this is all done, trace a single failed request through all the various CAPI layers, through all the various Diego layers. So hopefully that will help make debugging failed requests across CF deployment more sustainable there. And thanks to previous efforts in the years prior, all the timestamps that you look at will be human readable along the way also. So it'll be almost luxurious to be debugging failed requests in CF deployment. And then another thing that in this case Ruben cares about is we've been kind of one of the sticking points on FIPS stem cell support. So because we have the audacity of writing some of our components in Ruby, we haven't had the same smooth FIPS support as a lot of the other components. So thanks to a lot of hard work by Ruben and folks in the working group, we're working to replace all of our MD5 usage and stuff like that, or optionally replace all of our MD5 usage and stuff like that for supporting the FIP stem cells. So we've had a first round of PRs merged around that stuff and continuing to work there to try to not block that initiative. And then another thing, we've been collaborating with the Diego team also to expose a lot of the work they had done around readiness health checks. So that work had previously fallen in older versions of CF deployment, but wasn't super well exposed through CAPI. So they're contributing a lot of the work, but we're doing our best to continue to support that and make it so the readiness health checks are observable through the CAPI API. So kind of a big block of collaboration with other working groups within CF deployment there. I guess as far as asks from us, so one thing, we had recently opened a PR on CF deployment talking about database compatibility. So this was something that has bit us a few times now, where for a long time we've said, we support MySQL and Postgres, but especially these days, MySQL and Postgres MySQL specifically, I'm not going to pretend that they're both equivalent ecosystems, but MySQL especially, what it means to be a MySQL is sometimes a bit of a complicated question. So for instance, for a long time and still in some of our release testing, we tested against MariaDB, but MariaDB has become increasingly not MySQL over time, to the point where other CF deployment components have, it's the top one there, have dropped support for MariaDB. Like I know currently UA and CredHub are intentionally not compatible with MariaDB. And then we also have the added complication that by default, CF deployment runs against a clustered Percona Galera cluster, which potentially adds some additional constraints there. So if we're doing unit testing against a vanilla single instance MySQL, and then when it goes to actually integrate and run in CF deployment pipeline, it's testing against a clustered Percona flavored MySQL, then potentially that has risen to some incompatibilities there. So there's not like anything super fancy here. I think it's mostly just saying like, okay, so the different CF deployment components have different levels of compatibility with different databases. So rather than each component individually documenting which databases it's compatible with, and potentially having having some non-overlapping databases between those components, it maybe makes sense to have some semblance of support described at the CF deployment level, just so the components kind of the different component teams have a general understanding of what databases they're trying to support in the first place. And for instance, that can give us a good reason to finally rip out MariaDB from CAPI test pipelines and stuff like that, because we're never going to support that we're not currently going to support that because it doesn't work with UAA. So, there's no reason to test against it. So that's database compatibility. There's an open issue, as we saw against CF deployment. So if you have thoughts or feelings about that, that's a good place to chat about it. I guess another thing I had heard, and I hadn't followed up on this, it looks like Chris Clark dropped off, but the CLI Windows signing key, I think, is about to expire. And we had reached out to Chris, I believe, like a month ago, in working to get that renewed with VeriSign or DigiCert or whoever was issuing that certificate. And last I had heard, we hadn't heard back on getting a refreshed certificate there. So I'm going to follow up separately on that one. This is just something that I learned at the end of last week. But that's another potential ask from the working group to get that smoothed over before the Windows signing key expires for the CLI.
Would it make sense to track that as an action item, right? Like for Chris Clark for next week, so that we at least can check in if that happened, and then because I don't know, like if you're going on parental leave, right, it makes sense that this is at least being tracked.
Yeah, and I'll reach out to him independently so he knows what that is. It's possible it may have resolved in the time since I became aware of it, which would be the best case scenario because then I wouldn't really have to do anything. But it makes sense to follow up on it.
Yeah, we will just check next week with him, and then he can say if it has been resolved or not.
Yep. And then I guess the final thing I've written down is on the build pack side. So currently, there's been a lot of interest recently, for better or for worse, in SBOMs for applications. And so currently there's nothing preventing a build pack, if they want to provide SBOMs, to include it in the droplet. Like there's been several demo build packs of what it would look like if you generated for build materials as part of the build process. But currently, basically your interface for it is basically just bundling it with the droplet, and then it's a little bit hard to get out at that point. Like you basically have to download the whole droplet tar. So something that we've been evaluating, we don't have a firm proposal on this yet, but something we've been evaluating is adding a new optional output to the build pack interface. So build packs can place SBOMs at a well-known location, and then we can store them independently or provide them independently. Just to, not doing anything super fancy there, but basically making it, if you're a build pack that wants to start producing SBOMs and you want to make them independently available from the compiled application source code or compiled application code, then this is potentially a grounds for doing that. And if SBOMs continue to be a thing of interest and we decide to either have a dedicated SBOM build pack or add SBOM generation support to the default set of build packs, then this would be a step along the path there for making that a reasonable user experience, rather than like, congratulations, we built a SBOM for you. Now go download this 500 meg tarball or zip file or whatever it is with all of your compiled source in it, and look for a JSON file in there. So again, early stages there. Probably if we decide to go down this path, we'll have a more formal proposal on that, but that's something that we're working on the build pack side.
Would that go through an RFC, or will that be an RFC on the build pack side?
I think some of it, my guess is it would probably be a TOC level RF or a top level RFC, just because it impacts both the build packs and the invoker of the build packs. So build pack lifecycle / CAPI. So my guess is it would probably rise to that level, but haven't written it yet, so maybe it'll be so small that it won't be turned into a full RFC.
Yeah, I would recommend an RFC, because I think there's also some things to consider around, like the fact that the process generating the SBOM, like if you're using some like you potentially want to in the future rescan with a newer version of SIFT, right? Like that's like SIFT will change over time. That's at least something that I know some internal efforts have run into. So I don't know, something to consider, and that would complicate things, right? Like that. So that's why I don't think it will be that simple. Or maybe in the initial proposal, but at least we need to consider that case.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I guess I also see Chris has shown back up. So one thing we talked about, Chris, was signing key for the Windows CLI. Are you familiar with that renewal that's going on?
I am very familiar with that renewal. It's been a major headache for some weeks. I believe Al and Hema should be all set with that. That the new certificate has been paid for, it's been issued. Unfortunately, we didn't get, as of like last night. So they should have everything they need to get that new certificate. That does not leave them a ton of time to install this. But it was, absolute headache for what I thought would be a simple process of renewing a code signing certificate. So I probably spent 30 hours in the last 2 weeks just going back and forth with DigiCert and our legal department and things like that. It's been a total headache, but we did get it like at the buzzer. However, I hope that the CLI team is able to get that sorted out today, so there's no downtime there. But they do have it, so if there is some downtime, hopefully it'll just be a day or so. That's been taken care of. It has been renewed. We have a brand new code signing certificate. Because it was such a pain, I got a 3-year one instead of a 2-year one this time, so I don't have to do this for a very long time.
All right, great to hear. I love it when problems are already solved.
That problem is more or less solved as long as the folks in the CLI team don't run into many problems, but DigiCert should be able to square them up. So I believe I'm no longer in this process, and I'm grateful for that. But yeah, they've got the cert. It should be all set. If not today, then very soon.
All right, excellent.
But if it was that painful, shouldn't we be doing this every month to make it a good to get more practice?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, the process is anyway, I was hitting myself for not just getting a 3-year one 2 years ago, but still I'd be running into the same issues then coming up. So it was a bit Byzantine.
Yeah, maybe there needs to be a TOC position for cert renewal, and I'm thinking Ruben sounds like an enthusiastic person to fill in that role.
Yeah, yeah.
Dedicated certificate rotator. Yes, perfect.
Regarding RFCs, I also are we done with this topic? Yeah. Is there a need to have an RFC for the distributed tracing? Because I think also in Diego there were some parts which don't do tracing, so that we walk end to end into this and have it.
So I think from my working group standpoint, we're viewing this as a continuation of work that was already in progress by other working groups. So I think we're not necessarily viewing this as like net new work there. As for whether there should be like an overall issue about distributed tracing across CF deployment, that's potentially something we can raise up. I mean, it's complicated a little bit by the fact that a lot of it is already implemented, but it might make sense to do a post hoc thing, at least describing how distributed or how the Zipkin tracing is working across the kind of core runtime components.
Yeah, because I think this would also be a great thing to document, right? Like how this works if it all has been implemented. So, Anita is here, so I don't know if she's aware of this effort.
Sorry, did I hear my name?
Yes. Greg was talking about the distributed tracing effort with Zipkin, and that's being rolled out. And we talked about if we need to have an RFC and if there's like efforts going on the doc side to document what has been built.
Oh, it's new to me. I don't know about any new documentation effort.
We do have docs. I can't promise how good they are, but I Googled and found some.
There are some docs. I know. I've been looking into this. So.
Yeah, what I mean is I haven't seen any changes that would flag them to me. So
yeah, so the documentation is slightly obscure, and also there are different tracing systems and the VCAP request ID in addition, and it's a mess.
Yeah, we're not looking to solve that problem.
Our own challenges with that.
Yeah. So in the realm of making reasonable promises here, we're not looking to unify all of the distributed tracing mechanisms that exist currently. We're trying to get a unified, at least one that spans end to end. And then potentially once we have at least one that spans end to end, then we can start thinking about whether it makes sense to fold in / deprecate some of the partial implementations in various phases or other portions of the code path.
Yeah, but that sounds like an RFC, right? Like at least have a plan of record of that's the intention, that we're like, because then if that's implemented, it also makes sense to align the docs with that.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I can follow up.
I'm happy to work with whoever, whatever help is needed.
Are there any other questions? I have one regarding the Java client. I saw some activities on that one. How does it look good that we get our changes for V3 support in, or do we have any feedback for the Java client?
Yeah, so I haven't followed up on that in a month or so. I had assumed that since I hadn't heard anything that it was going well, but maybe that was a bad assumption there. So last I had heard, there was a number of Java client PRs that had come in. I think engineers in that working group area had reviewed the PRs and left some feedback. I think there was like a lot of kind of annoying yak shaving stuff just around like code formatting and stuff, because unfortunately the project currently doesn't have any like standardized linting and stuff. So there was a bunch of kind of like white spacing and formatting changes just due to IDE differences and stuff like that were caused some back and forth there. But last I had heard, I think there was still going back and forth on it, but I'll admit I haven't followed up on it this year. So I can poke the team again if those are still not moving along.
Yeah, it will be great if we can get the V3 support this year.
Yeah, or have an alternative decision that we abandon it, but don't have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll follow up with them again.
Say in zombie state, that's that's the worst thing I think we have.
And my second question would be regarding the next long-term support release of Ubuntu. So we had some discussions in our working group to most probably we will start to work to produce a stem cell line for that. And the question would be, have you thought about a stack for the next long-term support?
Yeah, so
yeah.
Historically, we haven't always had the same stack and stem cell Ubuntu version. Not necessarily saying that we did that for a good reason. I think we've been loosely thinking about what we want our next stack to be. Since stack migrations have historically always been so annoying, having like as long a migration window as possible, while also providing as long a time on a given stack as possible. I think we don't have any concrete plans right now, but I think it's definitely something we should be thinking about. I say this while I know that the CF Linux FS3 migration feels so recent, but yeah, I guess like Ruben was saying, if something is painful to do, maybe we should just be changing our stack every Ubuntu release.
Yes. Yeah, because we most probably work on an RFC, and this could be combined before RFCs before were combined, and if you have plans, we can then combine. Have only one RFC.
All right. Yeah, I haven't thought about it in any detail, but I think it would be good to at least have a plan there, if not action.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions? Not, then thank you, Greg, for the update. And yeah, we can continue with the next point, review PRs. So the first two, Stefan already requested changes on those. That's why I think we don't need to look into those. But This one I wanted shortly to. So this one is about two repositories which already have been renamed and they exist in our Cloud Foundry organization, and one removal. So the repository which here is removed, which was renamed, as I understand it is correctly, or Diego's here. So this repository exists in our Cloud Foundry organization. I'm not sure when we just remove it here, then it will stay there.
I guess so. This tool won't remove anything. It will create new repos, it will update repos, archive them, for instance, but it won't remove repositories, if I remember correctly.
But is this about like renaming a repo? Because what we typically do is not rename it, right? And then make the changes here so that like have the tooling create a repo with a new name, and then after it has been created, you delete it and then you do the move.
Yeah, but they have been renamed already.
Because I think what happens then is that the tooling will create the old one.
Yes,
and then it breaks the redirect, I believe.
Yeah, there is no redirect. Yeah, if you
but I mean, if that's already happened, then it is what it is, I guess.
But the question is, so if we merge this one, then we have manually to remove the repository here.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like it's still there right now. I'm gonna say the redirect's not super important. This is just little lock files that our pipeline uses to make sure people aren't using environment, so.
So I already checked the repositories. They exist in the application.
But
yeah,
they also need to be added to the charter, right? Otherwise,
they exist there. I checked.
They exist there.
They are already added to the charter, and this is only to have them for the automation. So that means maybe Amelia, action item for you to remove the repository at the end.
Will do.
Yeah. Otherwise, it looks good. I checked there in existing in the charter. And
I forgot I have that power. I was gonna ask Chris Clark.
I need another approval.
Yeah, it's coming. It was just fast enough.
So many clicks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah,
with regards to that one, the last one, so there's now a bunch of people that have responded with like, please keep me. What's the process for that?
Yeah, this is what I wanted to discuss us next. Yeah. Most probably, so I activated the automation, and we have all the users here notified that who will be removed. And we got some users asking, please keep me in. I think we can just suggest if they have a role to create a PR. For example, here, the user is saying that he's reviewing PRs. He most probably he can get a reviewer role for the CLI. And the rest, I think we can just mention that the adding is quite easy. Please create a PR like this when you plan to contribute, something like that.
Yeah, I think we have to motivate those people to have one activity, because otherwise the next run will remove them again, right? Whatever.
Find a typo.
Yeah. But
Well,
isn't
adding
even,
themselves back will count as a PR,
yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. Or commenting on this issue, isn't that already an activity?
I checked, but somehow they are
Ah.
added. Maybe I have to check now. I checked on that day when they did the comment, and this wasn't somehow enough to get them out.
Yeah, but
But
we could ask that they modify. I know that doesn't work. No, this PR from a right. They don't have access rights, right, to modify this PR. Yeah, the easiest would be to request, please go through the process and re-add yourself. That's a certain hurdle you have to jump across. So it's not as easy. Please keep me. And the automation will work then for 1 year.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
okay, yeah, this is also a solution, because I don't want manually to take people out here, and next month it will be again the same. Okay, then I will suggest for users who see can have a role to create a PR to have a role, and others to add them afterwards when this is merged. Yeah. But otherwise, it seems that everything worked. And we have now the PR. So after the meeting, I will comment. Okay, now any other business? We have two topics. One regarding the next long-term support version of Ubuntu. Yeah, we discussed shortly this in our last foundational infrastructure working group meeting. And we will look how we can organize the work around this. But the intention is to create a stem cell line.
So I would be in favor of really have an RFC for the next version and to cover stem cell plus the stack, because from end user perspective, the stem cell is an implementation detail, but the stack is what really counts, and build packs, etc. I can of course offer help here with a runtime deployments working group when it comes to validation, but the real technical work is of course with the build pack team, and because they build the stack and they build or adapt the build packs to the new version. That's then where Greg has to say a word.
Yeah, even without the stack, we want to create a PR, because other working groups have to commit that they will validate the stem cell. Otherwise, doesn't make sense for us to create. Yeah, but okay, I think we can start. We will discuss to start the RFC, and then if there is a stack, we can also incorporate that onto the RFC. And the next point is about the cleanup of access permissions, which are added manually to the repositories. So Amelia started here, notified all the working group leads and informed them what has to be done. So the question is, how can we organize this so that we get this implemented. Do you need an automation for this? The first question.
I guess so. It will happen again and again and again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not fun to do once manually, and also you have no guarantees that it stays that way, right? So.
Yeah. And do we need an RFC? Maybe the first question would be.
No, because it's basically a bug, right? Like the fact that there's no RFC saying that it's allowed, so it just needs to go. And maybe we want to notify people again, just out of being nice people, but it's not required.
Yeah, I can take an action item to work on automation.
If you need help, I can also. I was looking into GitHub when I implemented the inactive user deletion. I worked a little bit. If you need something.
Yeah, I'll definitely look at that.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Yes, I was wondering if there's anything known about like the status of VIPS validation in the CF deployment pipeline. I saw that most of the PRs that were linked in the CF deployment issue have been merged. So I was wondering that pipeline.
Yeah, I guess it's the pipeline is still red because the copy issue is not yet solved with the migration from MD5 to XXhash.
That has been merged.
Yeah, the fixes are there, but it's not yet the configuration, and the configuration changes are a bit more tricky. According to some people here in my room, we need 2 major CF deployment versions to make that in such a way that that there is no downtime during the updates. So we have first to enable in Diego the support for the XXhash algorithm, and then make a major CF deployment release, and then we can disable MD5 in the copy configuration. There's a configuration flag meanwhile that supports both versions of hash sums, and then we can finally remove it. So it's basically the implementation is there, but the rollout is a matter of time.
Yeah, so it's the rollout, but is the VIPS pipeline testing the upgrade scenario as well? Is it blocked? Because it could do like a greenfield deploy. You do not have to do that multi-stage thing, right? You could just deploy it with the
yeah,
right
that's a point. I think there's no update check inside. It's just the greenfield deploy, but it's based on the standard configuration. And what I can do, I can check with Jochen whether we can adapt an experimental or create an experimental ops file that pre-enables FIPS, and then we can see. Yeah, that makes sense. I will take that with me.
Yeah, would be good.
Yeah.
Then at least we have some. Because what I'm interested in, so I have personally tested with with most of the upstream fixes to see if the smoke tests work, but I would also be really interested to know if like the acceptance tests work on their FIPS.
Okay, I will take this.
I also added an action item. Okay, is there anything else? Then we are done for today. Thank you for attending and have a nice day, evening. Take care and
Okay.
see you. Bye bye.
See you. Bye bye.